The drill broke through the rock at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon, station time. Myra had heard the change in sound before she saw anything. The grinding noise suddenly became hollow, like the machine was chewing through empty air instead of stone. She raised her hand and the drilling stopped. The other workers looked at her with tired eyes. They had been mining on 4 for 6 months, pulling rare metals from the frozen ground of this dead moon. Nothing interesting ever happened here. Nothing was supposed to happen here. "We hit a pocket," one of the workers said. He was a tall creature with 6 limbs and hard shell covering his body. "Probably just gas. Seal it and move on." But Myra shook her head. She was the team leader and something felt different about this. She walked to the edge of the hole and looked down. Her light cut through the darkness below, and what she saw made her breath stop in her chest. There was a cavern down there, a massive one, and in the center of that cavern sat something that should not exist. It was a ship, a starship, bigger than anything she had ever seen. It rested on the cavern floor like it had been sleeping there for a very long time. The metal of its hull was black and smooth, unmarked by time or damage. Strange patterns covered its surface, glowing faintly with a light that had no source. "Get the supervisor," Myra said quietly. "Get everyone." Within hours, the news spread across the galaxy. An ancient ship had been found on a worthless mining moon. Scientists estimated it was over 2 million years old. That was older than any known civilization, older than the Galactic Union itself, older than the memory of any living species. The Galactic Union sent a research team immediately. They arrived in expensive ships with expensive equipment, and they looked at the human miners like they were dirt on their boots. Supervisor took command of the operation. He was an official with cold eyes and a voice that expected obedience. He organized the alien scientists into teams and gave them important tasks. The humans he assigned to carrying equipment and cleaning floors. Park did not complain. She was trained to study ancient alien cultures, but in the eyes of the Galactic Union, humans were newcomers to space. They had only been traveling between stars for 300 years. Other species had been doing it for thousands. What could humans possibly contribute to real science? So carried boxes and watched from the shadows. She watched the scientists scan the ship with their instruments. She watched the telepaths try to reach whatever mind might live inside. She watched the gas beings float around the hull, searching for any sign of life. Nothing worked. The ship remained silent and dark. Worked beside her, connecting cables and adjusting sensors. He was young, only 29, but he was one of the best engineers in the human fleet. That still was not good enough for supervisor. "This is a waste," muttered one night as they sat in the corner of the cavern, eating their simple dinner. "They have been trying for 2 weeks. Same methods, same results. Nothing." Nodded. She had been studying the patterns on the ship's hull whenever she had a free moment. They looked almost familiar to her, like something she had seen in old books about Earth's ancient past. But that was impossible. Earth had no connection to whatever civilization built this ship. "The markings bother me," she said softly. "They remind me of something, but I cannot place it." "Maybe we are just seeing what we want to see," replied. "Humans do that. We find patterns everywhere, even where they do not exist." On the 3rd week, supervisor called a meeting. His voice echoed through the cavern, cold and final. "The ship is dead," he announced. "There is no power source we can detect, no active systems, no response to any form of communication. It is an empty shell, nothing more. Tomorrow we begin disassembly. We will take it apart piece by piece and study the materials." The alien scientists nodded in agreement. Some of them looked relieved. This mystery had frustrated them, and they were happy to turn it into something simple and manageable. But felt a pain in her heart. This ship had survived for 2 million years. It had waited in the darkness while empires rose and fell across the galaxy, and now they were going to cut it into pieces like a dead animal. That night she could not sleep. She walked back to the cavern alone, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. The ship loomed above her, silent and patient. The faint glow of the patterns on its hull made the darkness feel alive. Found her there an hour later. He was carrying a small toolkit, planning to collect some samples before the disassembly began. "You feel it too," he said, "that this is wrong." Nodded. This ship chose to stay hidden for 2 million years. It chose to remain silent when the others tried to wake it. What if it is waiting for something specific? Like what? I do not know, but look at these markings. Really look at them. Stepped closer to the hull. He traced the patterns with his eyes, following their curves and angles. Something about them did feel familiar. Not alien, something else. He was tired. He had been working 18-hour days for 3 weeks, and his body ached with exhaustion. The frustration of being treated like a servant boiled inside him. Without thinking, he spoke. "Why will you not wake up?" he said in Korean, his native language. The words came out bitter and sharp. "We came all this way. The least you could do is show us something." The ship's lights turned on. It happened all at once, like a heartbeat. The faint glow on the hull became a blinding flash of light. The patterns that had been dark for 2 million years suddenly blazed with power. A deep hum filled the cavern, vibrating through the rock and the air and the bones of everyone present. Stumbled backward, his heart pounding. Grabbed his arm to steady him. They stared at the ship as it came alive before their eyes. The other scientists came running. They poured into the cavern with their instruments and their questions. Supervisor pushed through the crowd, his cold eyes wide with shock. "What happened?" he demanded. "What did you do?" Could not speak. He just stood there, staring at the ship that now glowed like a small sun. The patterns on its hull moved and shifted, forming shapes that almost looked like words. Answered for him. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the sudden silence of the cavern, everyone heard her. "He spoke to it," she said, "in a human language, and it answered." Every alien in the cavern turned to stare at the young engineer. Their eyes held shock, confusion, and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. The ship had waited 2 million years. It had ignored the calls of every advanced species in the galaxy. But when one tired human spoke a few words in frustration, it woke up. Why? What did it want? And what did it know about humanity that humans themselves had forgotten? The answers waited inside, and they would change everything. The news traveled faster than light. Within 3 days, the entire galaxy knew what had happened on 4. An ancient starship, older than recorded history, had responded to a human voice. The Galactic Union sent more ships, more scientists, and more soldiers. Suddenly, the worthless mining moon became the most important place in known space. Arrived on the 4th day. She was a linguist, a woman who had spent her life studying dead languages and forgotten scripts. The Galactic Union had dismissed her work for years, calling it useless and backward-looking. Now they needed her desperately. She stepped off her transport and looked at the chaos around her. Military vessels hung in orbit. Research ships crowded the landing zones. Reporters from 100 worlds tried to push past security barriers. Everyone wanted to see the ship that had chosen humanity. Commander met her at the entrance to the cavern. He was a reptilian species known for their military strength and their suspicion of anything they did not understand. His yellow eyes studied her like she was a threat. "You will report everything you learn to me directly," he said. His voice left no room for argument. "The Galactic Union has an interest in controlling this situation." Nodded politely. She had learned long ago that arguing with military officers was a waste of time. Better to agree and then do what was necessary. The cavern took her breath away. The ship rose from the stone floor like a mountain made of black glass. Its hull still glowed with those strange patterns, and felt her heart beat faster when she saw them, and had been right. The markings did look familiar. She spent the first 2 days studying the patterns in silence. She took thousands of photographs. She traced the shapes with her fingers. She compared them to every ancient script in her database. And slowly, impossibly, a pattern began to emerge. "These are not random," she told the research team on the third night. "They have structure, grammar, meaning, and some of the root forms match languages from Earth." Supervisor made a sound of disgust. "That is impossible. Humans did not exist 2 million years ago. Your species was still climbing trees." "I am not saying humans built this ship," replied calmly. "I am saying that whoever did build it shares something with us, some connection we do not yet understand." The experiments began the next morning. The team brought in humans who spoke different languages. They asked each one to speak to the ship and recorded the results. English produced a weak response. The patterns on the hull flickered briefly. Mandarin did slightly better. Spanish and Arabic showed similar results. But when a young technician spoke in Swahili, the ship's hum grew stronger. When an engineer from Helsinki spoke Finnish, lights began to move across the surface. Then stepped forward. She had been preparing for this moment. She spoke a phrase in reconstructed Proto-Korean, a language that had not been spoken for thousands of years. The words felt strange on her tongue, rough and ancient. The ship blazed with light. Every system came online at once. The hum became a song. The patterns on the hull danced and flowed like living water. And then a door opened in the side of the ship, a door that had been sealed for 2 million years. From inside, a voice spoke. It was not quite human, but it was close. It spoke in a language that sounded like music, like wind through trees, like water over stones, and somehow understood every word. "Welcome, inheritors. We have waited so long." The scientists rushed forward, but the voice stopped them with a single word. It felt like a wall of sound pressing against their chests. "Only the inheritors may enter, only those who carry the light." Commander stepped forward, his hand on his weapon. "This ship belongs to the Galactic Union now. You will allow us access or face the consequences." The voice did not respond to him. It was as if he had not spoken at all. "Looked at in." They looked back at her with the same question in their eyes. Then together, the three humans walked toward the open door. The inside of the ship was not what they expected. It was warm and soft, filled with gentle light. The walls curved around them like the inside of a living creature. In the center of the first chamber, a column of light rose from the floor to the ceiling, and within that light something moved. "I am the voice," it said. "I am the memory and the guardian of this vessel. I have been waiting for you since before your world had a name." Founder courage first. "Why us, why humans?" "Because you are the children of the architects," the voice replied. "You carry their blood. You speak with echoes of their tongue. You were hidden on your world long ago, placed there for safekeeping until the time was right." "That cannot be true," said. "Humans evolved on Earth. We have the fossil record. We have the genetic evidence." "You have what was meant to be found. The architects were skilled at hiding their work. They placed you on a dangerous world, a world of earthquakes and storms and predators, because no one would look for treasure in such a hostile place. And they were right. For 2 million years, no one looked." His mind raced through implications. If what you say is true, then what happened to the architects? Where did they go? The voice was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its tone had changed. There was sadness in it and fear. "They went to war. A great enemy came from between the galaxies, an enemy that consumed entire civilizations. The architects fought them and won, but the cost was terrible. They used the last of their strength to push the enemy back into the void. Then they faded away, leaving only their children behind." "And this ship," asked, "what is its purpose?" "This is the Sentinel. It is one of 12 vessels built to protect the galaxy if the enemy ever returned. But the Sentinels would only answer to architects. And so they have waited, silent and patient, for the inheritors to find them. Outside the ship, Commander was growing impatient. He spoke into his communicator, sending reports to his superiors. Words like containment and control and threat floated through the cavern. The other aliens watched the humans with new eyes. Some looked curious, others looked afraid, a few looked angry. When and emerged from the ship, the voice came with them. Not physically, but as a presence that surrounded them. It spoke to the assembled crowd, and its words carried weight. The inheritors have returned, the sentinels will wake, and the galaxy must prepare. Supervisor stepped forward. His voice was controlled, but his eyes showed his fear. Prepare for what? The voice answered with a question of its own, directed at, "Do you know where you came from?" Thought of Earth. She thought of humanity's long journey from caves to stars. She thought of all the struggles and wars and triumphs that had brought them here, and she realized that everything she thought she knew might be wrong. "I thought I did," she said quietly. "Now I am not sure." "Then let me show you," the voice replied. "Let me show you who you really are." The light from the ship grew brighter. The patterns on its hull began to form images, stories, memories of a time before time. And everyone in the cavern, human and alien alike, watched as history rewrote itself before their eyes. The truth was coming, and it would change everything. The images formed in the air like smoke, becoming solid. Everyone in the cavern stood frozen as the voice showed them a story that had been buried for 2 million years. In the beginning, there were the architects. They were the first species to travel between stars, the first to build cities on other worlds, the first to understand the deep laws of the universe. They lived for thousands of years and thought on scales that other species could barely imagine. And they were kind. They looked at the young worlds scattered across the galaxy and felt love for the life that struggled to grow there. So they became gardeners. They seeded planets with the building blocks of life. They guided evolution gently, nudging creatures toward intelligence without forcing them. They watched and waited and hoped that their children would one day join them among the stars. Shin arrived during the third day of the Voice's revelations. He was a historian, an old man with gray hair and tired eyes who had spent his life studying humanity's past. The Galactic Union had called him because they needed someone who could separate truth from fantasy. But what he found in the cavern made him question everything he thought he knew. "This matches certain ancient myths," he said quietly too, as they watched another vision unfold. Stories of gods who came from the sky, of creators who shaped humanity from clay and breath. Every culture on Earth has some version of this tale. "You think the myths are memories?" asked. "I think something happened long ago that left marks on our collective mind. Whether the voice is telling the exact truth, I cannot say, but there is too much overlap to be coincidence." The voice continued its story. The architects created dozens of species across thousands of worlds. They watched their children grow and learn and reach for the stars, and for a long time there was peace. Then the enemy came. The images darkened. Something moved at the edge of the galaxy, something vast and hungry. It had no name that could be spoken. The architects called it simply the Hollow because wherever it went it left nothing behind. Not death exactly, something worse. An emptiness that swallowed everything, even memory. The war lasted for 10,000 years. The architects fought with weapons that could reshape reality. They built the Sentinels, ships that amplified the power of their minds and bodies. They pushed the Hollow back, inch by inch, star by star. But victory came at a terrible price. The architects knew they would not survive, the voice said. They had given too much of themselves to the fight, so they made one final choice. They would hide their youngest children somewhere the Hollow would never look, somewhere dangerous, somewhere that would make them strong. The image showed a blue world covered in oceans and storms. Earth. Humans were planted there 2 million years ago. Your genetic memory was locked away. Your connection to us was hidden. You were made to forget so that you would be safe, and you were made to struggle so that you would become warriors. Felt tears on her cheeks. She did not know why she was crying. Perhaps it was grief for the architects who had sacrificed everything for their children. Perhaps it was grief for humanity, which had suffered so long without knowing why. "Why did you not come for us sooner?" she asked. "Why did you let us struggle alone?" Because the Hollow was still watching. It retreated, but it did not die. It waited in the darkness between galaxies, nursing its hatred, rebuilding its strength. If we had come for you openly, it would have followed. So we waited. We trusted that when the time was right, you would find us. Elder floated forward. There was Ancient, a cloud of glowing gas that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. When it spoke, its voice was like wind through crystals. "The legends are true," it said. "Every old species has stories of the architects. We thought they were myths, but you are saying they were real." "We were real," the voice confirmed, "and some part of us lives on in the inheritors." Commander had heard enough. He stepped forward, his hand on his weapon, his eyes full of suspicion and fear. "This is convenient," he said. "A mysterious ship appears and tells humans they are the chosen ones, that they are descended from gods, and we are supposed to believe this. We are supposed to bow to the youngest, weakest species in the Union." The voice did not respond with anger. Its tone remained calm and patient. "I offer proof. Come forward, Commander, touch the Sentinel's hull, let it read what you are." Hesitated. Then pride overcame caution. He walked to the ship and placed his scaled hand against the black metal. Nothing happened. "Now," the voice said, "let one of the inheritors do the same." Stepped forward. He was still not sure he believed any of this. It sounded like a fairy tale, like something humans told themselves to feel important, but he placed his palm against the hull anyway. The ship sang. It was the only way to describe it. Power flowed through like electricity and music combined. The patterns on the hull swirled around his hand, responding to his touch. Information poured into his mind, knowledge of systems and weapons and technologies far beyond anything the Galactic Union possessed. He stumbled backward, gasping, caught him before he fell. "The Sentinels respond to your genetic signature," the voice explained. "Only those who carry architect blood can fully bond with them. This is not politics or belief. It is biology. It is truth." The cavern fell silent. The alien scientists looked at each other with new expressions. Some showed wonder. Some showed fear. A few showed something darker, something that looked like jealousy or rage. Supervisor spoke first. "If humans can control these ships, then the Galactic Union must control the humans, for the safety of all species." "You cannot control the inheritors," the voice replied. "And you should not try, because the enemy is coming. The Hollow felt this ship awaken. It knows the architects have returned in some form, and it will come to finish what it started 2 million years ago." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Shin, the old historian, asked the question everyone was thinking. "How long do we have?" The Hollow moves slowly. It fears traps, but once it is certain it will come with everything it has. I estimate you have less than 1 year. 1 year. To prepare for an enemy that had nearly destroyed the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. 1 year to find weapons that had been hidden for 2 million years. 1 year to turn a galaxy of suspicious, divided species into a united force. It seemed impossible, but as looked at the Sentinel, as she felt the power humming beneath its surface, she began to hope. The architects had prepared for this moment. They had hidden their children and their weapons. They had trusted that when the time came, humanity would be ready. Maybe they were right. Maybe humans were more than they seemed. Maybe the struggles of Earth had forged them into exactly what the galaxy needed. The voice spoke again, and this time its words were directed at the 3 humans who had first awakened it. "You must find the other Sentinels. 11 more wait across the galaxy, hidden in places only you can reach. Find them, wake them, and prepare for war. And looked at each other. They were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were just humans doing their best in a universe that had never seemed to want them. But maybe that was exactly what the architects had intended. Maybe being human was enough. "We will try," said. "Then there is hope," the voice replied. "For the first time in 2 million years there is hope." The training began immediately. The voice had knowledge locked inside it, knowledge of how humans could interface with architect technology. But knowing and doing were different things. The human teams had to learn from nothing, building skills that should have taken generations in mere weeks. Was the first to truly connect with the Sentinel. She was young, only 27, a pilot who had made her name flying rescue missions in the asteroid belts of the outer colonies. She was known for taking risks that other pilots called insane and somehow surviving. When she sat in the command chair of the Sentinel for the first time, something changed. The ship responded to her thoughts before she even formed them. It moved with her instincts, reacted to her emotions, anticipated her desires. It was like the machine had been waiting for her specifically, like it recognized something in her that she had never known was there. "This is impossible," she whispered as the Sentinel lifted from the cavern floor for the first time in 2 million years. "I have flown ships my whole life. Nothing feels like this. It is like the ship is part of my body." "You are bonding," the voice explained. "The Sentinel is learning your patterns and you are learning its. In time, you will not know where you end and it begins." Outside the cavern, the galaxy was falling apart. News of the ancient ship and its claims about humanity had spread to every corner of known space. Some species reacted with joy. They had always liked humans, found them curious and creative and brave. They were happy to welcome them as descendants of the legendary architects. Others were not so welcoming. Commander's reports had reached his superiors, and they had reached others in turn. Within weeks, secret meetings were happening across the Galactic Union. Powerful species who had always seen humans as primitives now saw them as threats. If humans could control weapons that no other species could use, what would stop them from conquering the galaxy? Admiral of the fleet was one of the few voices of reason. She was old and wise, and she had seen too many wars started by fear and jealousy. She traveled to 4 herself, pushing through the blockades and restrictions that others had tried to put in place. "We do not have time for politics," she told the assembled leaders. "The voice says an enemy is coming, an enemy that nearly destroyed the architects themselves. Whether we like humans or not, we need them. We need those ships." Supervisor shook his head. "And if the humans decide to use those ships against us, they have every reason to resent how we have treated them." "Then we give them reasons not to resent us," replied. "We treat them as partners instead of servants. We build trust instead of chains. It is the only way." While the leaders argued, the human teams prepared to scatter across the galaxy. The voice had given them locations, hidden places where other sentinels waited. Each location was dangerous. The architects had chosen their hiding spots carefully, putting their weapons in places that would test anyone who tried to claim them. Would travel to an ocean world called Nine, where a sentinel rested at the bottom of a sea so deep that normal ships would be crushed by the pressure. Would go to a dying star, where one sentinel orbited inside the corona itself, protected by shields that only architect technology could penetrate. Would seek a sentinel hidden beneath the oldest temple of a place so holy that outsiders had been killed for merely looking at it. Each team would face different challenges. Some would need to convince hostile species to let them pass. Some would need to survive environments that would kill ordinary humans. Some would need to solve puzzles left by the architects, tests of intelligence and character that had no easy answers. On the night before they departed, the human teams gathered in the cavern one last time. Myra Han, who had first discovered the ship, stood with them. So did Shin, who would stay behind to study the Voices archives and prepare humanity's defense. "We do not know what we will find out there," said. "We do not know if we will come back, but whatever happens, we have already done something impossible. We have proven that humans matter, that we have a place in this galaxy." Smiled, her hand resting on the hull of the Sentinel that had become an extension of herself. "We have done more than that. We have given the galaxy a chance. That is worth any risk." The farewells were brief. There was no time for long goodbyes. Within hours, the teams were scattered across the stars, each racing toward a different corner of known space. Weeks passed. Reports came back slowly, carried by faster-than-light communication drones. Found her Sentinel at the bottom of the Nine Ocean. The descent nearly killed her team, but the ship was waiting, patient and powerful. It woke at her touch and rose from the depths like a god emerging from sleep. Its mission was even harder. The dying star burned with radiation that would have killed normal humans in seconds. But the Sentinel on 4 had shared something with him during their bonding, a resistance that let him survive where others would have died. He reached the hidden ship and claimed it for humanity. His task required diplomacy instead of endurance. The priests tried to stop her. Commander himself came to arrest her team. But when she spoke the old languages, when she showed the symbols that matched their most ancient texts, they understood. The Sentinel beneath their temple was not a violation of their faith. It was proof of it. 7 Sentinels were found in total. 7 ships that could change the shape of any battle. 5 more remained hidden, their locations unknown even to the Voice. Perhaps they had been destroyed by time. Perhaps they were simply too well hidden to find. But 7 was enough to begin. The Sentinels gathered at the edge of Galactic Union space, where the stars grew thin and the darkness between galaxies began. Human pilots sat in their command chairs, minds linked to machines that amplified their thoughts and feelings into weapons of incredible power. And then the sensors detected something in the void. It was the Hollow. It had stopped hiding. It had gathered its strength over 2 million years of waiting, and now it came for revenge. The fleet that emerged from the darkness was beyond anything the galaxy had prepared for. Millions of ships, if they could be called ships. They looked like nightmares given form, twisted shapes that hurt to look at. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply came, consuming everything in their path. Admiral commanded the Galactic Union fleet. Thousands of ships from dozens of species stood together for the first time in history, but even she knew it would not be enough. "We cannot win a straight fight," she said over the command channel. "We need time, time to evacuate civilians, time to reinforce the core worlds, time for the Sentinels to reach their positions." The first battle began in the outer reaches. Union ships fought bravely, their weapons blazing against the endless tide of the Hollow. But for every enemy ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. The Union fleet began to fall back, step by step, system by system. Then the Sentinels arrived. Led the charge. Her ship moved with impossible grace, dodging attacks that should have been unavoidable, striking with weapons that tore through hollow vessels like paper. Behind her, 6 more Sentinels spread across the battlefield, each piloted by a human who had learned to become one with their machine. The tide began to turn. The Hollow had expected easy prey. Instead, they found warriors who refused to break. Warriors who had been forged on a world of storms and predators. Warriors who had been designed by the architects themselves to stand against the darkness. For the first time in 2 million years, the Hollow knew fear. The battle was not won, not yet. The enemy was too vast, too powerful, too determined. But the retreat became a fighting withdrawal instead of a rout. The Union forces held lines they should have lost. Civilians escaped systems that should have been consumed. And in the hearts of every species watching, a small flame of hope began to burn. Humanity had come to fight, and they were not afraid. The battle for the galaxy lasted 7 days. 7 days of fire and darkness. 7 days of ships dying by the thousands. 7 days in which the fate of every living creature hung in the balance. The Sentinels fought without rest. Human pilots pushed themselves beyond any limit they had known, their minds linked to machines that amplified every thought and feeling. When one pilot grew tired, another took their place. When a Sentinel was damaged, it repaired itself using knowledge that had been old when the first stars formed. Became a legend during those 7 days. She led the Sentinels into the heart of the Hollow Fleet again and again, striking at command ships and breaking formations that the enemy had thought unbreakable. Her ship moved like it was alive, dodging death by margins so thin that the other pilots could not understand how she survived. "You are afraid," she shouted over the communication channel during one desperate charge. "I can feel it. The Hollow is afraid of us. They have never faced anything like humans before." She was right. The Hollow had consumed civilizations across the universe. They had broken species that were ancient when the architects were young, but they had never encountered anything like humanity. Humans did not surrender when the situation was hopeless. They fought harder. Humans did not break when they were outnumbered. They found ways to win anyway. Humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, and they had not just survived. They had thrived. The architects had known what they were doing when they chose Earth. On the 4th day, the Hollow tried a different strategy. They pulled back their fleet and sent a single vessel forward. It was not a warship. It was something else, something that pulsed with dark energy and spoke with a voice that crawled into the minds of everyone who heard it. "We are the Hollow," it said. "We remember the architects. We remember how they burned our worlds and killed our people. We came for revenge, but we are not without mercy. Give us the inheritors. Give us the humans, and we will leave this galaxy in peace." Admiral did not hesitate. "The answer is no." Supervisor, who had once wanted to control humans for his own purposes, stood beside her. "We stand together," he said. "Humans are part of the Galactic Union. An attack on them is an attack on all of us." The Hollow vessel was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again, and this time its voice was filled with something that might have been confusion. "You protect them, even knowing what they are, even knowing they will one day surpass you all." "Especially because of that," Elder replied. "The architects were wise enough to create protectors for the galaxy. We would be fools to reject that gift." The battle resumed. On the 6th day, 2 Sentinels fell. Watched from his command chair as the ship piloted by a woman named Sara was torn apart by a concentrated assault. She had been covering the evacuation of a colony world, holding off 100 enemy vessels while civilian ships escaped. She saved 40,000 lives before her Sentinel finally gave out. Lost her ship an hour later. She had pushed too deep into enemy territory, trying to reach what she believed was a Hollow command center. She was wrong. It was a trap. Her Sentinel was destroyed, and only the quick action of saved her life, pulling her escape pod from the wreckage before the enemy could reach it. 5 Sentinels remained, 5 ships against millions. But the Hollow had paid a terrible price. Their fleet, which had seemed infinite, was visibly smaller. Their attacks, which had been coordinated and overwhelming, were becoming scattered and desperate. On the 7th day, made a discovery. She had been fighting near the center of the Hollow formation when her Sentinel's sensors detected something strange. A single ship, hidden deep within the enemy fleet, was different from all the others. It was old, far older than the rest, and it pulsed with a frequency that the Sentinel recognized. "That is their heart," the voice said through her ship. "The Hollow are not a natural species. They were made long ago by enemies of the architects. That ship contains their core, the intelligence that controls them all. Destroy it and they will fall apart." Relayed the information to the other pilots. They formed a plan in seconds. their minds linked through the Sentinel network. The final assault was the most dangerous thing any of them had ever attempted. 4 Sentinels would create a diversion, drawing the Hollow's attention away from the core ship. The 5th, piloted by, would strike directly at the heart. It should not have worked. The odds were impossible, but humans had never been good at accepting impossible odds. Led the diversion force. She burned through enemy ships like a comet through dust, her weapons blazing with a light that made the stars seem dim. Flanked her, his Sentinel moving with precision that matched her wild courage. 2 other pilots and covered their rear, fighting off every attempt to surround them. Slipped through the chaos like a ghost. Her Sentinel was damaged, slower than it should have been, leaking power from a dozen wounds. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Too many people were counting on her. Too many sacrifices had been made to get her this far. The core ship loomed before her. It was massive, easily 100 times the size of her Sentinel. Its surface crawled with weapons and defenses that tracked her every movement. It knew she was coming. It was waiting. "You cannot destroy us," the Hollow said through her communication system. "We have existed for ages beyond counting. We have consumed civilizations that made your architects look like children. What can one small human do against such power?" Did not answer with words. She answered by firing every weapon her Sentinel possessed. The first volley tore through the outer defenses. The second punched holes in the hull. The third reached something vital, something that screamed with a sound that echoed through every mind in the galaxy. The core ship exploded, and with it, the Hollow fleet began to die. Ships that had been attacking with coordinated fury suddenly stopped moving. Some drifted, empty and silent. Others turned on each other, confused and lost without the mind that had guided them. Within hours, what had been an unstoppable invasion became a scattered collection of targets. The Galactic Union forces finished what the Sentinels had started. By the end of the 7th day, the Hollow were broken. Not destroyed entirely, perhaps. Some fragments of their fleet escaped into the void, fleeing toward the darkness between galaxies. But they would not return for a very long time, maybe never. The cost had been terrible, billions of lives lost, dozens of worlds damaged or destroyed, 2 Sentinels gone forever, their pilots remembered as heroes. But the galaxy survived, because of 7 ancient ships, because of the architects who had built them, because of the humans who had woken them. In the weeks that followed, things began to change. The species that had doubted humanity now looked at them with respect. The governments that had tried to control them now asked for their help. Humans were no longer the youngest and weakest members of the Galactic Union. They were protectors, inheritors, something new. Stood on the bridge of her Sentinel, looking out at the stars. Her ship had been repaired, its wounds healed by technology she was still learning to understand. Beside her stood, and who had bonded with a new Sentinel found in the wreckage of the battle. "What now?" asked. "The Hollow is gone, the war is over. What do we do with ourselves?" The voice answered, its presence filling the bridge with gentle warmth. "The war is won, but the work is not finished. 5 Sentinels remain hidden somewhere in the universe. The Hollow may return one day, and there are other threats, other enemies, other challenges that the galaxy will face. So we keep going," said. "We keep searching, we keep protecting." "That is what you were created to do," the voice replied. "That is what the architects hoped for when they placed you on your dangerous world. They wanted children who would not give up, who would not break, who would face the darkness and refuse to look away." Smiled. It was a tired smile, worn by grief and exhaustion and the weight of everything that had happened. But it was real. "Then that is what we will do," she said. "We will find the other Sentinels. We will prepare for whatever comes next. And we will protect this galaxy, not because we have to, but because we choose to." Put his hand on her shoulder. "The architects chose well," he said. "Whatever else happens, we prove that much." The Sentinels turned toward the endless stars. Somewhere out there, 5 more ships waited to be found. Somewhere out there, new adventures called. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the fragments of the hollow nursed their wounds and watched. The story was not over, it was just beginning. But for the first time in 2 million years, the galaxy had hope, and that hope wore a human face.